So the first thing that we're going to need to do is create a role as an admin. Now this is going to happen in our actual server script, I guess. So what we'll do is open up, let's close all these for now, and open up server.js. And then what we'll do is we'll do kind of a condition. So we'll check if role admin is not created yet, then we're going to create it and add the first user object of the application to the admin role. So this will be executed every time the application starts, which is how we can retroactively assign a role to our first user. So let's go ahead and type in, and if you guys were to open up model config, we can see role mapping and role are already created. They are part of the default loopback.js application, and so we're going to be using those. In server.js, go ahead and at the bottom of the file write role. Oh, man. So sometimes Visual Studio Code is annoying. So if I do anything after this point, if I press dot or tab, it's going to select the top element, which is HTML table row element. So what I do is I hit left and then right and then do it. And what we're going to do is find, and we're going to open up brackets, and we're going to write a filter. Now, a filter can modify what we're trying to find. So really, we're trying to find if a role with the name of admin exists. So we're going to type where, and then we're going to open up new curly braces, and we're going to type name, and then the name property is going to be admin. Now let's get out of these curly braces and comma, and here we're going to catch an error or a role. And then we're going to use an arrow function here. So if not error and role, we can see if we have a role. So we're going to assume this should be an empty list actually. So we should be able to right now, if we just console log, no, actually let's use, oh man, single quotes, no error, role is, and then the role. And I'm going to add spaces here to make ESLint happy. And here I actually need to precede role with app.models. .role. Let's save. Let's put a semicolon here and then save again. And we're going to run the application. So Control C out of here and npm start. Just so you guys know, every time we make a change to server.js, we will have to, well actually anytime we make any code changes to the application, we will have to restart it. So if I say restart, just Control C out of the application and run npm start in the applications directory, and then enter. And this will restart the application. And we can see here at the bottom we get no error, role is blank. So now we can drop down here and say if role.length equals 0, and I'm going to need to put spaces around my if statement. So if our application was not able to find a role with the name of admin, we are going to create one And then we are going to get our first user object, and we're going to set the role, basically. So let's go ahead and so if length is 0, then what we're going to do is type app.models.role.create. Going to open up brackets and then open up an object. So in here we are going to create a new role with the name of admin and comma here, the trailing comma thing. And then we're going to so I'm not sure if I explained this yet, but every time you interact with a model, you will have, the first property, the first argument is going to be kind of like a filter or the object that you're looking to create or post or whatever, and then the second parameter will always be a callback function. There will always be a callback function here, and for the most part, the format of the arguments of the callback function is going to be error and result. So I'm going to say error2 because we don't want to take the error namespace that's already been defined from the previous callback, and we're going to say result. And then we're going to open a function here. And now what we're going to have to do is basically say if not error2 and result, it has worked. It has created the role. And so what we'll need to do is get the first user object and then create a role mapping. So if we look in model config, role mapping should be here, so that this will be accessible also as app.models.roleMapping. And this is basically a way to connect roles to users. And so let's go ahead, and now in here we are saying if there's no error2, which means the role has been created, and we have the result, which will be the role that we've just created, we can go ahead and modify the role. So result dot principles dot create, and what we're going to create in here is principal type is going to be equal to app.models.roleMapping.user, and user is actually going to be all caps, and then principal ID is going to be our user ID. Now we don't have this specified yet because I made one mistake in basically the flow of this. So let's leave this down here for now. What we're going to do is, if we've created the role, we're going to try and get the first user. So app.models.user.find one, and we're going to just take user error or result. Actually, let's say user, and we're going to put this over into an error function. So if there is no user error and I don't know why a comma added there, and user, which means we have a valid user. So if these are true, I'm going to put a space here, make this look a bit neater. Then we're going to do this. So I'm going to copy this and put it out here, and we're going to drop it into our user find method. And so in here now, principal ID will be equal to user.id. This will find one user, so the first user that was created, and it will apply this. Now we're going to get a callback, which is error 3. Well, let's open up brackets here and say error 3 and principal. I cannot spell. There we go. And we're going to put this over into an arrow function, and we are going to console log created principal, and we're going to print out error 3 and principal. There we go. That's all we need to do, except, as you'll see here, I've made a few mistakes. We're going to add the trailing comma. We're going to replace the single quote, or the double quote with single quote, and I clicked auto fix all auto fixable problems, and that also fixed the code block having extra lines. So now I'm going to save, and after all that, we should have a default admin user, which is going to be the first user that was created. So let's go ahead and Control C and npm start. And we'll see that it says created principal null. And this is because the first property we were trying to print out was the error. And then the second is the actual principal itself. If we open up MongoDB here, and I right-click on my website and click refresh, we'll now see that under role, we now have admin. And role mapping, we now have a connection between the role ID and the user ID. So if I open up user here, we'll see ID equals, and it's hard to remember this entire string of text, so we'll just look at the last 4 digits, which is 8C27. If I go back into role mapping collection and look at principal ID, it's 8C27. This is the user ID and this is the role ID. And so it has connected it in the back end to understand that this user is an admin. Now, right off the bat, that doesn't really do anything because we haven't actually locked down the API in any way. We haven't told the API that only admins are allowed to post posts. So if I refresh this and go to post, we'll still see that we are able to put and post and patch and do all of this stuff, including delete, that really should only be able to be done by admins. So even an unauthenticated user would see all these routes in the Explorer, and if they were trying to use the application, let's assume we have, our React application as a front end to this API. If we built a button in the React app that would call, let's say, delete on a certain post, anybody would be able to press that and it would delete the post because it's not checking yet if the user that's logged in and authenticated is able to perform these actions. So in the next video, we're going to start locking down this post collection by only allowing admins to post and put and do all that extra stuff, while everybody will be able to get posts.